Hi everyone, I'm Mims and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for being here. I was watching a TerraTube video last night and it was actually an older one. And the person in the video very specifically said that they didn't need a deck. And ironically, they were going through a very lovely haul of decks. But what they said specifically was, really, the deck doesn't matter. Give me some pieces of paper and numbers on it and I can read it. And I thought about that. And I remember there's at least 2 or 3 other people who have talked about this before. I do find it kind of funny because all of these peeps, and it doesn't matter who it is, because I do think, regardless of what I think of their collections, oh my goodness, they have amazing collections, but I also am I have a pretty darn good collection too. But there was something about that idea of I could take 78 pieces of paper and put numbers on them and make a deck. Now, if you know anything about me, if you've seen videos of me from the past that I ended up deleting, or even if you just watch a recent video that I did about a spread, I have talked about the fact that index cards are probably my very favorite thing in the world. Above tarot, above food, above puppies. Okay, maybe not above dogs. I don't know. But I absolutely love index cards. And I love them for multiple reasons. I have always had index cards on hand. I have used them for copying down recipes. I've used them for copying quotes. I've made a video where I specifically where I talked about making a spread book. I'll include that below just because that's on top. So I just always have index cards and I love them, and I'm old enough to remember the time before the digital age. I don't mean 1800s, but I'm still old enough to remember life before texting, life before cell phones in general, life before smartphones, and even life before the internet. With all of that, and because of this comment, I thought about it and I thought, that's a really good idea. And I had just gone, and I try to always keep a few extra index cards on hand, and I had a pack of index cards and there were 100 in the pack, and I thought, okay, I definitely had enough then to make a tarot deck. So that's what I did. I made, and this is kind of silly to okay, we're not gonna do a flip through, don't worry. This is not Sesame Street. But what I did was I took 78 cards and I numbered them 1 through 78. And I thought that it could be just a really helpful study tool. Now, I've been reading tarot cards for 10 years. And I know other people on YouTube have been reading much longer and much less. The number of years that you've been reading doesn't necessarily correspond to your experience level, right? And we have different levels and different ideas of what tarot reading means. You might just read for yourself. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying you might read for yourself, you might read for others, you might read for friends for free, you might have a huge following that you do lots of, YouTube videos and readings that way. You might read in a store. There's a whole bunch of different ways of reading tarot. And that's one of the many reasons that I love tarot. But I thought but as a result of that, one of the many reasons that tarot attracts me is that no matter what your level of comfort, maybe we should say that, a level of comfort, there's always, I think, and at least for me, I'm pretty sure that if I'm 99 and I've been reading tarot for however many years, there's still going to be something new to learn. And the things that I love the most in my life have a few things in common. One of them is that there's always something new to learn to it. So whatever your level of expertise is, you can always have a new deck or go back and study an old deck, right? There's always, if you know Thoth, you can read Marseille, you can read whatever, right? Like you can get more experienced in that. You can dive into another level of symbolism. You can dive into color symbolism. You can unite it with, maybe if you study astrology, there's a whole bunch of different ways of including. Or if you've read for yourself and now you're ready to read for others, there's just always something new to learn. And if nothing else, there's always a new deck, and reading that guidebook, and even if it's pretty similar, there's still maybe something new that you'll learn that way. And I love that. So I just loved that this person was like, all I need are 78 pieces of paper with the numbers on them. And so I thought about that. And for half a minute, I thought about putting correspondences to the cards on the bottoms, on the backs. Because I thought, well, then I won't have to do the math. But then I realized, if I'm using this deck, and calling it a deck is a little bit, but it is. It's 78 cards with 78 numbers. I also realized that if I put numbers on the back or put numbers on the bottom, then I'm going to automatically go to the back. And I would rather use my even just elementary math addition skills to figure out what the deck correspondence would be. I also thought it would be nice because then I can decide, like, okay, am I putting strength at 8 or am I putting justice at 8? And then at 11, am I putting strength or justice there? And so I also kind of loved that this very basic system gives me something to play with. And I thought that it would be good for me at times, instead of like leaning on a new deck. It could be fun for studying. It could also be fun for a different kind of numerology. I often think about numerology and I think about like the majors, or I think about the basics of numerology within the pip cards with the 1 through 10, right? And even just some very rudimentary kind of numerology. You know, like 1 beginning, 10 completion, 5 is sort of conflict, 7 is confidence, and those are just, that's like, I'm just talking like very baseline, and those are the ones that I think of off the top of my head. But I thought about this and I thought, I could then apply this to if I'm doing a deck study, or if I'm really diving into Marseille, or wanting to do, I already read playing cards, but if I really want to get into playing cards more, I could get down to just the 52, right? There's a whole bunch of different ways that I could use this. And I was able to get the pack of index cards. Well, I already had them on hand, but I know that the last time I bought index cards, I think these were like $1.50 or $1 a pack. They might have been on sale, but still. So and you don't even need index cards, right? Like you could do scraps of paper. You could do the same thing. But I just thought that this was a neat thing to add into my own study material. And no matter what I'm doing, I can think about, like, if I want to, I can try to recall, if I'm working on Marseille, for instance, I can recall, like, okay, what does the 7 of Swords look like? What does the Devil look like? What does the Rider-Waite-Smith look like? What does the Thoth look like? Or if I'm studying another deck and I just want to see if I have it down, I could use this deck for that. So I just thought that with a few offhand comments of other tarot tubers that have been in the back of my head for a while, I just thought that it would be kind of fun. So let's do a 1-card pull, and I'm going to think Rider-Waite-Smith. So in that case, I'm thinking the first, and again, I could have done the 1 as the 0, but I already had numbered them. So 1 in this case is going to be the Fool. 2 is going to be the Magician. Like already right there, I could have done 0 through 77. But anyway, so I'm just going to go, in this case, we're going to draw a card. And I'm thinking 1 through 22, the majors. And then Wands. Oh, let me think. How does this go? I have to think about it now. Wands, Cups, Swords, Pentacles. So these are in order at this moment because I put them back in order. I actually shuffled them yesterday to see if I could think of it. And again, I'm not ever going to use this to read for others, but I thought it would be helpful to me for being an ongoing reader and student of tarot. So what message do you have for us today? Okay, 49. So let's think about this. 22 would be the majors, and then another 14 would be 36. So that would be Ace through King of the Wands, and then 37 to, let's do the math, 22 through 36 would be the Wands, and then 37 through, my goodness, 14, 51. So what would this be? Okay, yeah, this is where the math gets tricky because sometimes I get mixed up. If it's 0 to 14, I can figure it out, but then otherwise I'm like, okay. So 0 through 22, 23. Okay, yeah, this is where it gets tricky. So let's do this. 48 would be 22 and 14 is 36. And then another 14 would be 50. So this is the Queen of Cups. And then watch. I'm going to be like, oh, no, it's not. Okay, but let's think about the Queen of Cups. What do we know about cups? Cups are feelings. Cups are relationships. Cups are questions of love. But they can also just be relationships. I often have questions, at least for myself, that are very much about relationships that are not romantic. So they can often be like questions about coworkers, questions about family relationships. So when I think about the Queen of Cups, I think often about she or they, again, not to be so whatever, but I think about the Queen as like looking out for the others, looking out for leading, but looking out for others, thinking about community, thinking about family, thinking about those kinds of relationships. So the Queen of Cups, I think about as the one who can be very self-controlled, but still very in touch with her feelings. As in, very in touch with what she's feeling, but she doesn't necessarily let her feelings override the actions of her day. She is not paralyzed by her feelings. She acknowledges them, she feels them, she knows what that means, and she feels them, does not ignore them, but at the same time also is ready to acknowledge what that feels like and then applies knowledge and ideas and other things to that. So I feel like the Queen of Cups tells us that feel the feelings, but you don't have to let your feelings and emotions interrupt your day, or don't only act on your feelings, but do consider them and do acknowledge them. And so don't let a hot moment of passion override your desire to be calm, or other people's emotions to interrupt how your day is going. So that's what I take from that. So anyway, have you ever made a deck just of the numbers? And maybe you're a little faster with math than me, but have you ever used this as a study tool? Would you consider it? Does this help you to consider a system that you work with? Have you ever done something like this as a study tool? I would love to hear. Anyway, thanks for your time. I hope you're well. I hope you are taking care of yourself and taking care of others and finding joy. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks so much. Take care.